Today we're going to look at how to use Excel to create a frequency distribution, a relative frequency distribution, and a cumulative frequency distribution. First, you want to go ahead and set up your spreadsheet like I have mine here. This is the title of your data here in the top left corner. Then this is your original data set in no particular order. I also have some other information here, my number of classes, which should be provided in your problem, and then just an explanation of what my class width is, which is the range over the number of classes. And here are some things that we're going to calculate: the class width, the lower bound, the upper bound, the midpoint, the frequency, relative frequency, and cumulative frequency. Okay, so once you have your spreadsheet set up, we're going to go ahead and get started by putting our data in ascending order. So to do that, just click on the top cell of your data set, click and hold, and drag down until you have your entire data set highlighted. Then go up here to this A to Z or Z to A button, yours may say something different, and choose under the drop down menu ascending. We want this in ascending order from lowest to highest. And mine's giving me a warning here. I want to just continue with the current selection, not paying attention to anything else on my spreadsheet, and sort my data. Okay, so you can see in my data set over here, it has sorted my data for me, lowest number first and the highest number last. Okay, so now I want to calculate the class width that I'm going to use. I have the number of classes is 5. Yours may be something different, and that's okay. So here's the formula for class width. We're going to actually let Excel calculate this for us rather than doing it by hand. So just click in a blank cell somewhere, and you want to start with an equal sign. This tells Excel that you're going to do a formula. And then I'm going to type in the range divided by the number of classes. Okay, so in parentheses, I'm going to do the range. Remember that range is the highest value minus the lowest value. So I'm going to just click on the highest value. You don't have to type in the numbers, just click on the cell. And that puts the cell where your highest value is found into your formula. And then subtract from that your lowest value. Just click on the cell, close your parentheses, and then we're going to divide by our number of classes. Mine is 5. Okay, so here's the formula. It says equals parentheses A26 minus A3, close parentheses, divided by 5, which is my class width. And then if you hit enter, Excel will calculate the class width that you should use for your data. Now, if you remember, we want to use whole numbers, so I'm going to round up this class width from 4.2 to 5. So just make a note, round up to 5. Okay, so let's start creating our tables here. The first lower bound, we'll use our lowest number. And then to get my next lower bound, I need to add that class width that I'm using, which is 5. So to do that, again, I'm going to let Excel do the math for me, so I'll start with an equal sign for the formula. And then I'll click on my original lower bound here, mine is 11, and add to that 5, which is my rounded up class width. Okay, my number of classes is also 5. So to continue this same train of thought, this same formula, what I can do is just go over here to the right-hand lower corner and drag down, right-hand lower corner and drag down until I have 5 rows. And this gives me all of my lower bounds, rather than having to add 5 yourself over and over again or have Excel add 5 over and over again. You can just drag down and it will continue that same formula. Okay, now for the upper bound. To find the first upper bound, it's 1 less than our second lower bound right here. So this will be equals, our second lower bound here is 16 minus 1. And that will give me my first upper bound. To find the rest of the upper bounds, I'm going to add my class width to the first lower bound. So it's going to be equals, click on that first lower bound, and then add 5. That makes sense. 15 plus 5 gives me 20. And then I'll use that same technique of dragging down that lower right corner to finish out the column. Okay, now let's check to make sure that this makes sense. My highest number is 32, and that should fit in my last class. So 32 does fit between 31 and 35. So this is correct. Okay, now to calculate the midpoint, we're going to use a formula in Excel again. You'll do equals, And then for midpoint, I want to average the upper and lower bounds. So I'm going to do parentheses, click on my lower bound, not type in the numbers, but click on it, and then plus sign, and then click on my upper bound, and then divide it by 2. So it's the average of those two. Okay, drag that down. Oops. And those should be our midpoints. Now let's see if this makes sense. First class, my lower bound is 11, my upper bound is 15, so the midpoint should be halfway in between those, which is 13. So this makes sense. Okay, now we're ready to calculate the frequency for each class. There are formulas in Excel that you can use to do this, and you're welcome to do that if you want. But I'm actually just going to physically count all of the data values that fit in each class. Okay, so for the frequency of the first class, I want to count data values between 11 and 15. Okay, so if I go over here to my original data values, there's only one data value between 11 and 15, so I'm going to put a 1 in the frequency column. Okay, how about between 16 and 20? So that'll be 1, 2, 3 of those. The next class between 21 and 25, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those. Between 26 and 30, 6, 7, 8 of those. And then between 31 and 35, I have 3 data values. Now, to make sure that I haven't missed any, what I can do is simply add up this frequency column and make sure that it equals the same number of data values that I started with. Okay, so I'm going to do, and just use one cell right below the frequency column, I'll do equals, and then sum, all capital, so add, and I'm going to add up this column. So highlight the whole column that you want to be added. Here mine's in H4 through H8. Yours may be different, but it's just the whole frequency column. And then hit enter. And I get 24, which is the same number of data values that I originally had. So I know that I haven't miscounted anything. All right, for relative frequency, I'm going to do the frequency divided by the frequency of the class divided by the total number of entries. Okay, so I'll do equals. Then I'm going to click on my frequency. For the first class, it's 1. And I'm going to divide by my total, which is, in my case, 24. It's whatever sum you just got. Okay, take that and drag it down. And if you remember, your relative frequency should add up to 1. So I'll do equals sum and add up all the values in this column. And they do in fact equal 1. So again, I'm just checking that my math is correct here. All right, for our last column, we're going to look at the cumulative frequency. Remember that cumulative frequency is the frequency of all the classes up until the one you're on. Okay, so the first frequency is just 1. For the next cumulative frequency, if I look over at my frequency column, I want it to add 1 plus 3. So it's all the frequencies, first class and second class. So to do that, I'm going to start over here again and do equals sum. And then I want it to add just these two. Now, on the next one, I want it to add 1, 3, and 9, the first 3. So what I'm going to do is put what's called an absolute cell reference in front of this first one. So I'm going to go up here to my formula bar and add some dollar signs in front of the H and in front of the 4, just on my first one. That says that it's always going to look all the way back to the first class to add. Okay, the H5 does not have dollar signs because that's changing as my formula goes down. Okay, so check that that's correct. 1 plus 3, that's 4, that's correct. And then drag this one down. And what you should see here is that in the last row, the total, 24, is showing up.